Welcome to Medical Matters Weekly with Dr. Trey Dobson, presented by Southwestern Vermont Healthcare and Catamount Access Television.
Today is February 9th, 2022. I'm Trey Dobson, Chief Medical Officer at Southwestern Vermont Medical Center and an emergency medicine physician with Dartmouth-Hitchcock Health. And this is Medical Matters Weekly, a show about the aspects of healthcare that matter to you most. My guest today is Caitlin Boyd. Through her work at SVMC's Pulmonary Rehabilitation program, she helps patients breathe better. Caitlin's bio, she has a bachelor's degree in nutrition and food science from the University of Vermont, a doctorate of physical therapy, so DPT from UVM. She helped create the Pulmonary Rehabilitation program at Southwestern Vermont Medical Center, I believe in 2015. And she is certified in pulmonary rehab by the American Association for Respiratory Care and the American Association of Cardiovascular and Pulmonary Rehabilitation. That was a lot. Caitlin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, you're welcome. It's great to be here.
So do people say DPT? Did I say that right?
Yeah, yep.
That's awesome. Where are you right now?
I am at our clinic up in Wilmington, so the Deerfield campus of SVMC. So 2 days a week, I do physical therapy up here. And then the other 3, I'm in Bennington, mostly in pulmonary rehab, but I do spend some time in our PT department over in the Tulin building.
How many locations are there in the health system?
There's the Deerfield campus, Northshire campus, Connell, Twin Rivers, our main campus.
Several.
Yeah, I think we have PT in all of them. We might just have OT in Connell. I'm not sure that we've ever had physical therapy down there. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's great. And so you've got some machines and stuff behind you. Maybe later you can kind of tell us what those things are. But let me just ask you about you personally. So you've been here. When did you come to SVMC?
2011. So just before Hurricane Irene happened, I was here for 2 weeks, and then Irene happened, and I was actually living in Wilmington at the time. So they got really hard hit. So I actually couldn't get to Bennington because the bridge washed out there in Woodford. So I had to live with my aunt and a friend in North Adams for 2 weeks to even get to work. So that was an adventure.
Wow. So that's a really memorable way to start off your career in the health system. So where did you grow up then? Did you grow up in Wilmington?
No, I grew up in Reedsboro, so small town east of Bennington, kind of next door to Wilmington. I went to high school in Wilmington, and then I went to college up at UVM, like you said.
Okay, and then how did you get interested in this field? Let's hear the story.
I went to UVM undecided, and I took an anatomy and physiology course, and I really liked it. And so I started looking at what I could do with that. They have a great med school program, but I was like, I don't think I want to do med school. My mom and aunt are nurses, and they love it, but I was like, I don't think nursing's for me. I'd always been an athlete, and so I realized they had a physical therapy program. I thought I would end up working with athletes, actually, but around that time, my grandmother was doing some physical therapy. My friend had an ACL repair, so I went to some of her sessions, and UVM had this great program where you could do your undergrad in 3 years and then your PT schooling in 3 years. And so I was able to get it done pretty quickly. It's intense, but it was only 6 years. And it was transitioning from a master's. It was transitioning from a master's to a doctorate. So I thought that was exciting too, to come out. We were the second class to graduate with our doctorate. So that was cool.
So yeah, that's really cool. So let me think about this. So you went to UVM your first year, you took that anatomy and physiology course. And then was it 6 years from that point that you got your DPT?
No, because I was able to take the prereqs and some sciences that first year. So, and I was able to apply, and I was accepted into the program. So as long as I had certain grades, I could just transition into it. So it worked out. It was hard my senior year because that was everyone else's senior year, but it was actually my first year of PT school. So, everyone was having a good time, and I was in this really intense, we were taking anatomy and phys and neuroscience with the med students. So it was quite different senior year for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. Why don't you tell us, so what is pulmonary rehabilitation?
So Pulmonary Rehab is an education and exercise program. It's designed to help you understand your chronic lung disease. It's designed to improve shortness of breath, improve your quality of life, teach you how to manage your condition. It's comprehensive. So we have physical therapy, we have respiratory therapy, we have nurses that help us. Dr. Algus, our pulmonologist, oversees it. So it's a really, there's multiple parties that are involved in it.
Most everyone that goes in and gets the, pulmonary rehab type certification, are they almost all coming from physical therapy? Is that the path that is the most common?
No, I would say there's definitely respiratory therapy as well. So some hospitals, it's just respiratory therapy that is involved in the program. So actually when we were establishing it and we went to observe a couple programs, it was actually a respiratory therapist that I shadowed with for the day and helped us create ours. And so I would say it's a mix between like physical therapy and respiratory therapy.
Are you doing exclusively pulmonary rehab, or do you still do some of the mechanical portions of physical therapy that people think about, musculoskeletal?
Yeah, so I still do regular physical therapy. The days that I'm here in our Deerfield campus, it's just anything, whether it's your shoulder, your back, balance. And I do vestibular rehab, so it has to do with your inner ear and how that affects your balance. So I do that here in Wilmington, but I also do it over in the Tulin building. And then outside of that, I'd say half of my time is in pulmonary.
Wow, I'm glad you brought up vestibular, because I think there's probably actually a lot of referring physicians that don't know that vestibular rehab is actually available at SVMC.
Yeah, so there's actually 3 therapists that do it, and we've really worked hard in the past few years to try to raise awareness. So there's much more than there ever used to be. But every so often we kind of get out there and put the bug back into the primary care doctors, like, hey, we're here and we can do it. And the ER, when we had physical therapy in the ER, we were getting some referrals. If people were coming in for that, then we try to get them set up that next week with us.
So that's great. We can actually do a whole show on vestibular rehab as well. So back to pulmonary. So what are some of these chronic lung diseases that you see and that patients experience that require pulmonary rehab?
Yeah, so the most common is COPD, so chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. That includes emphysema and chronic bronchitis. So pulmonary rehab is the gold standard for treatment of COPD along with medication. But research has actually supported, pulmonary rehab for all types of other lung conditions. So asthma, pulmonary fibrosis, interstitial lung disease, even people who are either currently going through lung cancer treatment or who have completed, whether it's surgery or chemo and radiation, to try to get, to improve their breathing and their function. And actually, most recently, there's a lot of research to support patients after COVID-19. So that's what's kind of changed in the last year or so, is actually helping people who have long COVID or people who are hospitalized and, not doing as well. So that's been the newest change, is the COVID-19 patients.
Right. So these are patients that have had some type of insult to either the upper respiratory tract or more likely to the alveoli, and their respiratory capacity is just not what it was. So they come to you and you try to help with that. So walk me through that situation. Actually, let's not use a COVID patient. Let's use a patient who has chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, and they are referred to you. So what steps are involved and what will they experience?
Yeah, so the first session is an orientation. So I get to know them, their medical history, and then specifically their respiratory history. So, how long have they known about COPD? What medications are they taking? Are they using oxygen? And then trying to get a measure of like their functional status, like what makes them short of breath? What are they having trouble doing? Are they still able to work? Have they stopped working? And then we do what's called a 6-minute walk test in the hallway. So it's a measure of their endurance, and they can take breaks because For some people, the idea of walking for 6 minutes is very scary. And even if you can just do a lap, we start with that. It's just wherever you are, we try to meet you there. And then it's just gentle, progressive exercise to try to improve your capacity. And so, we teach you about pursed lip breathing and deep breathing on that first visit. The follow-up sessions, it's twice a week. It's about an hour to an hour and a half. Patients come in, we check their vital signs, so their blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen levels. We go through a warm-up, which does include the breathing exercises. We have equipment. So I'm not sure what you can see, but to my left, there is an arm bike. So a lot of people have not seen an arm bike before. There are recumbent steppers and then treadmills. And if people are not comfortable on treadmills, we walk in the hallway. And, we just started out easy. People are very fearful of the idea of exercise. Like, I can't breathe to even walk to my bathroom. How am I going to exercise? But even if you can just do a minute, and then we build up from there. And then, people just kind of cool down and we check their vitals before they leave. We are monitoring heart rate and oxygen throughout the whole time that they're exercising to make sure those are staying stable. Some people are coming to us and they're newly on oxygen. So we're monitoring, what are their oxygen levels? How much do they need to have proper saturation? So it's making sure people are safe to exercise, building their confidence in exercise. And then while they're there, we're providing education. So what are the medicines you're taking? Are you using them correctly? Do you know about pacing yourself and energy conservation? Do you know about the pursed lip breathing and deep breathing? We talk about nutrition. We talk about depression and anxiety. So it really covers a variety of things.
How long do they typically stick with the program, or how long do you recommend that?
Yeah, our program runs for 8 weeks. So when we were creating the program, we looked at research and it was anywhere from like 6 weeks to 12 weeks. So we just started with the 8 weeks. Pulmonary rehab, you get lifetime visits. So there's only 36 lifetime visits with Medicare. And so we thought if we use 16, it would give people a chance to get going. But then if they ever had an event, pneumonia or something that landed them back in the hospital, they would still have sessions later on if they needed it. And at the end of the 8 weeks, people can transition to our maintenance program. So that's where they come in twice a week and they exercise more independently on our equipment. Because you want to continue the gains that you've made in those 8 weeks. You don't want to just go back home and stop exercising. Some people are great. They'll get out walking every day. They have a treadmill at home that they start using again, or a bike. And other people really like to come in because usually it's myself or our nurse that are running that, and people can check in with us, and we're just monitoring their health a little bit, and people find that helpful.
So you said, so let me back up and say, so you said about 32 to 36 sessions are covered. And right. And then when you say that, that means by a payer, in this case, Medicare, so that patients aren't, paying out of pocket for this service, health-related service. And so since it's 8 weeks, the typical session's twice a week. So there's where you can come up with 16 sessions if you go through the program once.
Right.
And then that allows you to, at some point in the future, come back for an additional eight weeks.
Correct.
Wow, that's great. That's actually pretty intense.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely. It's a very comprehensive program, and it's really designed to help you manage your lung condition. So like lifelong, COPD doesn't go away. The damage that's been caused, we can't, heal that. We can't cure that. But if we can learn to use the part of our lungs that's still working well, and then also, like our diaphragm is the muscle that we use to breathe. So when you have breathing problem, our diaphragm is not activated as well. So it's just like you can do a biceps curl and strengthen your biceps, you can strengthen your diaphragm as well.
Oh, it's a great analogy. So talk to us a little bit about the outcomes, not only anecdotally what you've seen, because we'd love to hear that, but what you know to be the case from literature review and outcome studies.
Yeah, so literature-based, it's the gold standard of treatment for COPD, so along with medications. But then the research has supported it with all these other conditions, so lung cancer, interstitial lung disease, and pulmonary fibrosis, asthma. And then, typically what we see is people, it's hard because people are short of breath and they don't think that exercise will help that. But if you learn to breathe while you're moving, and then your heart and your lungs become more efficient at getting in the oxygen you need and getting it out to your muscles while you're moving, it actually becomes easier to move around. And then that becomes easier to walk around your house or do your stairs or get out to the grocery store. So people find that they can move around easier. And then, just quality of life, because you're not so short of breath just to sit there, you're able to do more for yourself. And so you feel better. It helps to improve mood, so anxiety and depression, because you're not just home focused on your breathing. Your breathing isn't controlling you. You have some control over your breathing, and you have some say in your chronic disease, which makes a difference. People feel empowered,
Right. So you've talked about there's definitely a positive effect on decreasing morbidity. And by the word morbidity, I mean sort of similar to what you're saying, improving quality of life. Yes. What about mortality? Is there data to suggest that pulmonary rehab decreases mortality?
I don't know on that. I mean, I know the research is out there with like smoking. So if Medicare used to not cover pulmonary rehab if you were smoking, but now they've changed that. So if you are still smoking but motivated to quit, and we can provide some smoking cessation education and help you in that process of quitting, that actually people are more likely to quit and follow through with that. And so, the biggest thing with lung disease, because typically COPD is caused by, years of having smoked. So if people can stop smoking, and then things like exercise, taking medication correctly, rather than their lung condition just like rapidly, declining, it's sort of this more gradual decline, or people progressing to needing oxygen. Sometimes we can stave that off, or, they were on 3 liters, but they can go down to 1 liter of oxygen.
Right. So that's so important, that change, to allow people who are wanting to stop smoking to start participating in pulmonary rehab, which may just be what they need to make that decision to stop smoking. And then in some of the other diseases you talked about that are not related to smoking, particularly the just restrictive lung diseases, even if the data does not show a mortality benefit, in other words, decreased numbers of deaths due to the underlying chronic condition, it certainly shows benefit as far as how you feel and how you go about your day, as you mentioned. And that is so important. In fact, I might even argue more important than a mortality benefit. And we probably will know a little bit more on mortality once these programs mature and more data becomes available over time. Okay. It's really exciting. So talk to us a little bit about some of the individual successes you have experienced and been a part of.
Yeah, so I had one patient who was on oxygen. She was on 2 liters of oxygen. She was very frail, barely was able to get herself dressed, take a shower, just kind of get around her house. She came in, she was very afraid to exercise, but she was determined. And she just did, that first day, she just did a minute. So she did a minute on the arm bike, a minute on the stepper, and a minute of walking in the hallway. And then she said, every day I come, I'm going to add a minute. And so she was able to, our goal is to get you up to 20 minutes of exercise on each of the machines. So build up your endurance first, and then increase the resistance. So whether that's, pedaling against more resistance or walking up a slight hill on the treadmill or a faster speed. And so she was able to get to that 20 minutes on each machine, and she was so proud of herself. And in turn, like, mood improved, her ability to get out to her doctor's appointments. She was still using oxygen. She still required her 2 liters, but it was just more than she'd been able to do in years. So that was an exciting story for me. I remember there was another gentleman that told me that I gave him his life back. He was able to get back to work. So he hadn't been working in 2 years. And with the program, he was just able to get back to work. And, even when I would see him around town or in the hallway in the hospital, he would just always tell me that I gave him his life back. So that was exciting.
That's fantastic. And for you as a healthcare professional, to help people limit their suffering and improve their quality of life is, I know it's a lot of hard work. And by the way, I'll use the opportunity to thank you and your colleagues and the entire staff at SVMC that work so hard in pulmonary rehab and throughout all of physical therapy and occupational therapy, it does make a tremendous difference to these, to the community and to the individuals. So thank you for that. A couple of things. Let me just ask you real quick. What are you looking forward to personally and professionally over the next year or two?
Well, personally, I have a 1-year-old son. So.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Watching him grow, and hopefully when things settle down with COVID, spending time with our extended friends and family, because we have large families. My husband and I have large families. And then professionally, I think just being able to continue to help the patients that have COVID. That's just been an exciting arena. So, I've seen some of the patients in the hospital that have been intubated and then have been able to come through our program and really improve their quality of life and get back to work. And for some of them, get off oxygen. And so that part's just exciting. Seeing where we go with COVID and what we learn about it, and who's able to improve and heal, and figuring out why some people are more affected by it than others, besides vaccination status.
Right. We certainly, Caitlin, had a guest about 3 or 4 shows ago who was a COVID survivor in the ICU. And he did talk about how he still has, even though he says he feels great in many ways, he still has diminished exercise capacity and diminished respiratory capacity. And that would be a super candidate, of course, for pulmonary rehab. And I believe he's actually going through that process. But that is exciting. And you can actually build the program and, again, make a difference in individuals' lives. And that's so important. What is the machine behind you? Is that just so that, is that actually a pulmonary machine over your right shoulder, I believe? Now you're blocking it.
So here?
No, other side. Maybe it's your left because it's reversed.
Oh, that machine right there. That's an ultrasound unit? And
I can't tell from here.
Unit. Yeah, so that's physical therapy based. We don't really use so much in pulmonary. To my left, I don't know if you can see. That is an arm bike.
Wow.
You see it a little bit. So we pedal with your arms rather than with your legs. So that's our fancy arm bike.
And the goal is to get up to 20 minutes on that machine.
Yes. And so because our arm muscles have attachments to our rib cage, which is connected to our diaphragm, it really does challenge our diaphragm more than we realize, not just our arm muscles.
Oh, wow. That's a great point. So, Caitlin, if myself or one of my family members, we feel like we need pulmonary rehab, what are the steps we take?
So just talking with your primary care physician, they can get you a referral. If you have a pulmonologist, they can send in a referral. So really any doctor, any provider that you see can refer you to the program. So primary care, Dr. Algus is the pulmonologist here at SVMC, or, you see somebody up at Dartmouth or something like that. They just get a referral. And then usually within a few days, I give you a call and we get an orientation scheduled as soon as possible.
Well, I'd like to thank Caitlin so much for coming on the show and explaining to us all about pulmonary rehab. We'll have to have you next year so you can talk about what's been going on with your COVID patients. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us on Medical Matters Weekly, as well as Mike Cutler from CAT TV, Ray Smith from Southwestern Vermont Healthcare, Ashley Jowett from Southwestern Vermont Healthcare. I'm Trey Dobson. Go out and find joy in everything you do, even in the face of adversity, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, Trey.
Thanks, Caitlin.